All right, get adjusted. There we go. So I've talked before about how things start in the Bible is important. We talked about the start of the Gospels or how Genesis begins. But we know how things end is also important to the story. Genesis ended with forgiveness. That's how we end that story. So we're in our last week. We're in our what we would call our final chapter of stewardship, even though stewardship is a year-long activity that we participate in. And we're finishing up telling our money stories. We've talked about the importance of remembering them. We've talked about how generosity can release us and help us release others. We're reimagining our money stories to use them in our gifts and our talents and our time in new ways. And so this week we're talking about restoring. How do our money stories restore? And this is a reminder that we have pledge cards. I know we collected offering in the pews if you haven't done it or if you've never done it. Those are the ways that we dream about ministry in the coming years, how we dream what we'll do next. So the story today is also at the end. It's at the end of John's gospel where Jesus reveals some ways to restore hope to the hopeless because he comes across the disciples who are fishing, but they are not catching. And so Jesus appears on the shore to them. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, you have no fish, have you?" They answered him, "No." And he said to them, "Cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." Then he cooks some breakfast, and he has this important conversation with Peter. He says, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." And he said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." So for once, the disciples are actually the experts in the story. That's not usually their forte in the Gospels. But they've been fishermen, so they know where to fish, and they know they've been trained to do this either by fathers or uncles or whoever they worked with, and they know how to work nets, and they know where to put them and how you pull it, and when it's empty for so long, you just kind of have to give up. It's just going to be a bad day. And I think this is such an amazing metaphor for the church sometimes, that we can spend decades shocked that by looking in the same places and doing things exactly the same way and the same methods, and we're shocked when the nets come up empty. In many ways, we are also experts. We've been doing this church thing for our whole lives, many of us. We're really good at it. And yet we can feel like the disciples, the scarcity mentality start to creep in. Where is everyone? Why aren't we like who we used to be? Where are the fish, y'all? Where are the fish? This is where we fished for so long. This is how we know how to do it. And I love that Jesus doesn't tell them to get new nets or even throw them away. He doesn't give them a new method of fishing. He doesn't say, well, now everybody has to become a carpenter and a whole new career. He just says, because sometimes he wants people to do really dramatic things. Like we heard a couple weeks ago, the rich young ruler, you have to give away all of your possessions. But sometimes he just wants us to look a different way. He says, try the other side of the boat. What you want is still within reach. You just haven't tried it yet or looked yet. It's like he's saying, don't lose hope yet. And those disciples needed to hear that message. They were hopeless at that point. Their teacher, their friend, the one they thought was the Messiah, was dead, and he was gone, crucified by the state like all the prophets before him. At the same time, over the last few years of their lives, they had seen stranger things than this, so they tried it. And when they pulled up the net, they could barely get it into the boat. It was so full of fish. And when they saw the abundance was right there, that's when they could identify Jesus on the beach. When they looked on the other side of the boat, their hope was restored. That's one of Jesus's powers, to give us and others hope when all we can see is the empty net. And I think it can be so easy to point at the empty net, but I think that means we miss the places where Jesus has been filling them in different ways. For example, usually around Easter is when we baptize any youth or young people who have reached the right age and are interested and wanted to do that. And we didn't do that this year because we didn't have youth who were the right age at this point. But we did baptize a man who I'm going to call was in his wisdom stage of life. He hadn't known Jesus for most of his life, and he decided for this stage he wanted to. And he read his Bible, and he met with Jerry and I, and he entered the waters of baptism with joy, with his family surrounding him. Along with all the other families that joined, he was on the other side of the boat. We talk about how great it felt on the Sunday we were celebrating General Assembly and how full the sanctuary was. We had a special speaker and how good that feels and how much we miss that. And I do, don't get me wrong, I miss that. But I also think Jesus would point to how full we were at Chili Kickoff in January and how full we were every Wednesday for food trucks, or how full we were for a community meeting here, how full we were for our bunco nights, how full we are every Saturday with people playing pickleball. And our gym from Monday through Friday is filled both with exercise classes and with children, Paula, with children who are safe and cared for and running around and laughing. I go down there, I get to hear it. It's a bonus of my job. We have met people with hospitality and fellowship and welcome, and they have responded. One event at a time, we restore hope that churches are still safe places, that churches are still welcoming places for all different kinds of people. Traditionally, we've gone either out in the state or out into the country in lots of places to do mission trips. Our youth have, sometimes our adults have. And those are powerful and important, and we were blessings in those places. But this year we turned around in the boat and saw that the need was right in front of us in our own building that had been neglected and continues to need more repairs. This is an ongoing thing we're going to need. But we learned on this side of the boat, people who had never participated in mission trips got to. People got to laugh and sing, apparently, together. I'm looking at Pam, because she said she did. I learned how to clean the baptistry. We got to learn something new when we looked on a different side of the boat while we were restoring a space. So we've talked about it a lot, but I want to tell you a story I just got to hear this week. There was again, I go down to the daycare quite a bit, and I met with one of the teachers who initially struggled a lot because change is hard, right? Can we all get an amen to that? Change is hard. But she came up to me and she said, I had heard this comment from her and I wanted to confirm it. And she said, I am so excited to tour parents around the space because I'm really proud of it. I'm not making excuses. I'm not saying it's going to get better. Like, I can't wait to show parents what we have to offer in this space. There are lots of fish on the other side of the boat. We restored a space, but we also restored pride and hope that things can change and get better. It's so easy for us on the inside to see what we lack, but I'm going to tell you, every person that visits this church or on our grounds tells me how much we have. They love telling me that the building is beautiful, that we have the best church band they've ever heard, that we're the playground church, that we're so welcoming at Bunko. I know that church. You guys are really well known for feeding people through Forgotten Little. I know that church. Oh, I know Jerry. I worked with him on a project. I know that church. They tell me what we do have. And speaking of Jerry, I am going to brag on him. I warned him. But when I think about the other side of the boat, Jerry, for about a year and a half now, because I suggested this, Jerry has been meeting with their young, I guess they're still young men, who are in his youth group. And it can be up to a dozen of them. Some of them even travel a ways to get to this meeting, and it's just a dinner. But they come, one, because they care about Jerry, but mostly they care about each other. And the reason they care about each other is because of Jerry. Because he taught them that's what men of faith do. Through love and through trust, over 20 years of ministry here, those men don't get together to talk about weather or sports, which is fine. But Jerry creates a safe space for them to share their vulnerabilities and their hardships. And he gives them a place to support each other. He shows them that this is what a man of faith can look like because he's that kind of man of faith. And he's that kind because he's been here, surrounded by good men of faith too. I say this because, as a female pastor, masculinity in ministry has looked a certain way for a very long time. But sometimes Jesus says, look at the other side of the boat. I believe Jerry's tender heart is his superpower. Can I get an amen? Yes, you can applaud that. Yes, you can. Jerry is one of the ways we restore hope. So if I'm going to talk about him, I have to say nice things about Meredith too. She's not even here to hear him. So when I thought about it, Meredith's heart is different. Meredith's heart is tough. And it has to be tough. She works with children and youth because she has to deal with shy kids and ornery kids and busy kids and kids who don't want to join anything ever. She also has to have a heart big enough, and she does, for kids who are struggling with mental health issues, which is rampant right now. She has a heart big enough for any gay or trans kid who looks at her and says, are you safe? Is this place safe for me? And she can say, yes. For families who are overwhelmed. And she can't do it the ways we learned 20 years ago because the kids are different and the world is different. She has to it's like she's spinning in the boat. She has to look off every edge of the boat to find new ways to reach out to these kids and these youth, whether that's a Zoom book club on mental health for parents or an escape room on the book of Ruth, which I got to do, which was amazing, y'all. Or it's an intergenerational nativity to show the ways we can all be worshiping together. Through her creativity and her ability to connect, she restores hope here. And I know these sound like people stories, and they are. But they're also our money stories about who and what we have chosen to invest in here at First Christian Church of Louisville. Stories of ways we have remembered God's love and welcome, the ways we have released ourselves and others to be free through generosity, maybe for the first time, reimagining how we use our talents and our time here, as we learned in the widow's story last week. I know our money stories don't seem that impactful when we're writing the check, or if you're like me, I automatic deposit and I see it in the line. It just feels like this small part. What can my small part actually do? But that's one of the blessings of stewardship is I don't have to do it alone. We do this together. We get to be generous together. You don't have to miss out on the joy of being part of something bigger than yourself in order to tell the same story, the one that Jesus was trying to tell on the shore, a story that restores hope to the hopeless. And I think one of the things our money story tells is that we take turns restoring hope for each other. Sometimes you need it, sometimes I need it. Sometimes we meet others who need it as well. Sometimes restorations look really big and dramatic, like the 1,000 people we got clean water for, all the people we fed. It looks like a net bursting with 153 fish. But restoration also looks like prayers between an elder and a member after worship. It also looks like a meal shared on a picnic table on a Wednesday night, or the songs you sing when you're painting and serving your church. These ordinary encounters become extraordinary because they invite us to stay. They invite us to listen. They invite us to connect and build relationships with people who sometimes are very much like us and sometimes are very different. It happens every time we offer comfort and support to those who are struggling and suffering. We restore hope and a lot more, one act of service, one generous gift at a time. I think when Jesus looks at First Christian Church of Louisville, he does not see an empty net. When people come into our building, they don't see what we're missing. They don't see what needs to be fixed. What they see is our genuine warmth and the welcome of our outrageously open table. They tell me how beautiful our space is, how much they love the band. They tell me stories of how their children are safe and cared for here and bring their grandchildren. Parents tell me how much they appreciate, like Paula, how we let children be themselves in this space. They tell me how much fun they're having at pickleball or at Bunko, or how much a call from Jerry or Meredith, even sometimes me, meant to them. The card they got from the elders when they were struggling. They tell me your stories. But what they're really trying to say is thank you. The people who walk through those beautiful doors for any number of reasons are trying to tell us that our story here at First Christian Church of Louisville is beautiful, and it's loving, and it's generous, and it matters. It restores hope in ways that only we are called to do here in this place, in this moment in time. We might be at the end of the Gospel of John, of his story, but we are nowhere near the end of our story here at First Christian Church. We too are called to listen to Jesus when he says, "Feed my sheep, tend my lambs." We have so many more stories in us. And when we are generous, we have the power to restore what is broken deep within ourselves and in the world.